deep inside of me said, quitter.
Yeah.
You're a quitter. I said, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. Started this war inside. And at that point, I could feel the warrior rise up and said, we're going to get this done. Get in the car, drive through the sleet, and start the work. And that's what happened. But that comes through that kind of conquering energy. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to finish. I'm going to pay it back. I'm going to get the job done. We're going to make this work. All that comes from an energy within. It's called the warrior. You see that in Scripture when in 1 Timothy it says these words, pursue righteousness and godliness and faith and love and perseverance and gentleness. Fight the good fight of faith and take hold. The word really means to seize. Seize the eternal life for which you were called. Now, I want you to look at just those terms for a moment, because those are what I call noble up terms. Godliness, righteousness, faith, those things are not easily seized in any man's life. Love, perseverance, those are the kind of things that you have to work hard for. You have to fight for. And it takes a while to take hold of those things. But here's an older man looking into a young man's face and calling the warrior out, saying, take up the sword and make these things work for your life. Bring them into your life. But it comes through the warrior. Here's a third face, the face of the lover. The face of the lover. Now, the lover is a face that is unnatural to man as the warrior is natural. Because lover is more difficult for most of us as men. It's the lover that picks up on his wife's real needs. It's the lover who is willing to let go of another good business deal in order to spend more time at home. It's the lover who can open his heart and share the things that he really feels, rather than hide those because he feels like he has to have a front for strength. But he can crack open the door and share the hurt in his life and the pain, and he can connect around that kind of sensitivity of feelings and a world of emotion. This is the face, by the way, reflecting romantic energy. Romantic energy. This is the face characterized by tenderness, by sensitivity, by sacrificial care, by emotional openness, by physical affection. Want to hear a warrior suddenly put on the face of a lover? This is the letter of a major in the Civil War, 1861, Major Sullivan Ballou, who wrote to his wife Sarah before the Battle of Bull Run. Here's what he said to her. Now, this is a warrior speaking. But suddenly, because he's got that balance in his life, he can put on the face of the lover. He says to her these words, "The indications, my dear Sarah, are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. And lest I should not be able to write you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I am no more. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged. And my courage does not halt or falter. I know how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help pay that debt. But Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence can break. The memory of all the blissful moments I have enjoyed with you comes crawling over me, and I feel most deeply grateful to God and to you that I have enjoyed them for so long. But how hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years when, God willing, we might have lived and loved together and seen our boys grow up to be honorable men around us. If I do not return, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I loved you. Know that when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and the many pains I've caused you. How thoughtless, how foolish I've sometimes been. But, oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth to flit unseen among those they love, I shall always be with you in the brightest day and in the darkest night, always with you. And when the soft breeze fans your cheek, it shall be my breath. Or the cool air on your throbbing temple, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I am gone, and then wait for me, for we shall meet again. A few days later, Sullivan Ballou was killed at the Battle of Bull Run. He was a warrior, but he was also a lover. He had the balance of both faces. Well, this face is seen in Scripture in such verses as Ephesians 5:25, when the Apostle Paul gives a tall order to men in every generation. He says, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church. And he says, here's how he loved the church. Here's how you are to put on the face of the lover. Jesus Christ gave himself up for the church. And if you are a husband who knows how to love, you'll give yourselves up for your wives as well. The face of the lover. Then finally, there is the face of what I call the friend. The friend. And can I say this to this large group? You know, many men don't have friends. I'm talking about real friends. And part of the reason we don't have friends, at least in the world we're living in, the kind of friends that connect with us at a soul level, is quite frankly, we don't have time for friends, do we? We want a friend. We want that person to give us his time to invest in us and talk to us and support us, but we just don't have the time. And so we live in these very superficial relationships where no one around us do we feel close enough to really trust with the secret things of our life. And no one that will let talk tough to us when someone needs to get in our face. That requires time. This last summer, I took my son and we went on a mountain climbing expedition in the Teton Mountains. And I'd never climbed a significant mountain before, but this summer we climbed a very significant mountain. And one of the first things we did, we had a guide, and he pulled out this rope, and we all put the rope over us and connected with one another to climb this mountain. We belayed up together. And for a while it was clumsy because you had the rope around you, but you had to hold the rope. And one of the first things we did is we began to scale a 200-foot sheer cliff. And I remember about halfway up looking down, and I was glad I was connected. And then I remember as we got towards the top, we had to go around a little curve on the mountainside, and it was a smooth rock about 10 yards wide with a little lip on it about this wide. And our guide got to the other side and then called us out. It was 2,000 feet straight down. And I remember stepping out there, and I was glad I was connected. How foolish it would have been of me at that moment to say, I don't need the rope, and I'll just cut it. I can step out there on my own. But you'd never do that when you knew that kind of danger was around you. Because when you do that, this rope becomes your hangman's noose when it's not connected. And what's true of mountain climbing is true of manhood. You can't climb the mountain of manhood disconnected from other men. It's almost a universal principle that if you're going to be it is a universal principle. If you're going to be the kind of man you're supposed to be, you have to be connected with other men who can speak into your life, who can call out the best in you, who can cheer for your successes, admire your efforts, and be your friend. Because that's what a real friend is. This is a face reflecting connecting energy. the friend face. And it's characterized by things like loyalty and accountability and challenge and fun. One of the reasons I think guys love coming in here is because deep in their hearts they sense, I can connect with some other men on something more than just the superficialities of life. Maybe, somehow, in some way, I can connect, I can join with some other man where I can begin to talk with him about some of the deep things in my heart. Of course, I need to find out for myself what even some of those things are, because I don't know, but there's something rumbling around in there. But if I could just get those out and deliver that into someone else's hands who could safely handle them and talk back to me and help me manage and shape and think through who I am and where I'm going, man, that's a friend. It's also a friend who comes around, who's noticed in your life the good things when no one else is noticing and compliments you on it. It's the friend who comes up alongside you when he sees you beginning to stray from the path, and because of the deep relationship that you have, he can call you back. But a lot of guys don't have friends because they themselves are not friend worthy. Are you friend worthy? To be friend worthy means you have to have connecting energy to other men. You have to be willing to risk and to reach out and to spend time with, to cultivate another relationship. Here's the way the Scripture says it. In Proverbs 17:17, it says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." I bet for some of you and where you are in life, even as I speak those things, because of the adversity that you're in, you'd say, I'd love to have a guy like that next to me right now. But a friend loves at all times. Scripture also says in Proverbs 27:17, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." We need another man rubbing up against us to rub off some of the hard spots in our life. But that takes friendships. So these four faces are the four faces of manhood, hopefully synchronized and balanced together. The king face, the warrior face, the lover face, the friend face. Now what I want to do in conclusion is make just a few final but important observations about these faces. Here's the first, letter A on your outline. All too often these honorable faces of manhood are replaced by what I call ugly caricatures. Now you've got a little diagram in your outline that I handed out, and I want to show you what I mean by that. Here are these four faces. In the king face, if we lean too far to the right of the king face, you don't get the king anymore. You get a tyrant. Isn't that right? And if you lean too far to the left on the king face, you don't get a king who's got righteous energy. You've got an abdicator. You've got someone who has compromised himself, has thrown down the sword and surrendered righteousness. The warrior face, if you lean too far to the right, you don't get a real warrior, you get a destroyer. You get someone who's abusive, harsh, the person who hurts not only himself but his family. If he leans too far to the left, you don't get a warrior at all, you get a wimp. Someone who has no conquering energy, just gives up, surrenders. When you see that in sports, when you see after a game and when the score gets too far ahead, you can watch the opponent drop his head. He surrendered. The warrior's gone. These great hulks of men, the warrior spirit's left them. A lot of guys who have given up the warrior. It's not worth it. On the side of the lover, if you lean too far to the right, you become critical and harsh. You're not someone who people are drawn to, much less your family or your sons or daughters, because you constantly are critiquing them. And very rarely are you loving them, pointing out what they did wrong rather than embellishing what they did right. Not picking up on the real needs, because oftentimes you're so focused on your own. If you lean too far to the left, you become cold and withdrawn. You become a rock and an island, disconnected from the love relationships around you. You can be a friend, but if you lean too far to the right, you become a user. It's like Alan Toffler said many years ago in Future Shock. He said the world would speed up so quick to where rather than have friends, we would have what he called Kleenex relationships. We would take them, use them, throw them away. That's how we treat our friends. If you lean too far to the right, you become a user. If you lean too far to the left, you become a loner. The disconnected guy, the friendless American male. Often the honorable faces become ugly caricatures, and then our world reacts to men and says, see, all men are brutes. All men are insensitive. Have you heard those words before? All men are loners. They just use people. And oftentimes those are the faces, but they're just caricatures of the real deal. Secondly, because of our morally compromised culture, many men today lack the king in their life. And without a king, the warrior becomes unrestrained. If you don't have a king in your life, the warrior can become unrestrained, hurting lives, including your own, in the process. You see, if what a man has in his life is a strong warrior but a weak king, the warrior gets out of control. It begins to rob and pillage and cheat and fornicate and beat and abuse and overindulge, because there is no king riding the warrior and helping the warrior live for the right things. The warrior without a king is a destroyer. And oftentimes that's happened today in our world, where our world kind of honors a dumbed down, immoral masculinity. Third, our increasingly feminized culture has emasculated the warrior in many young men. The result has been the creation of what I call the soft male, indecisive as to direction and weak as to leadership. We talked last week about a culture that increasingly disconnects fathers from sons, and really in the last 30 years has really spurred on the warrior spirit in women. And as men have grown quiet in that environment, and as young men are raised primarily in overly dominated female environments, what it's done is it's stolen the warrior out of a lot of young men's lives. They've grown up where the warrior's been suppressed, because the right spirit of a warrior is usually called out of a young man by older men, calling him to become that kind of warrior. But oftentimes in a female environment, the warrior is downplayed or suppressed. Don't hit Johnny, stop. And what you get is what I call the feminized man. Not the effeminate man who has feminine characteristics. The feminized man who can be strong and tough looking on the outside. But when it comes to initiative, they wait. When it comes to leadership, they're soft. When it comes for the moment of decision, they defer. Often to a woman. And the reason they do is because the warrior is gone. Instead, it's the soft male. Here's what I want you to know, and this is the last point today, and we'll close. Our world today is desperate to see in men this four-faced balance of manhood. That's what our world wants to see. North, south, east, and west, those are the 4 points on the compass. Winter, spring, summer, fall, those are 4 seasons in the year. Earth, wind, fire, water, those are 4 elements on the earth. King, warrior, lover, friend. Those are the four faces of manhood. And guys, here's the question for you this morning. When you look in the mirror, what kind of man do you see? Next week, we're going to start unwrapping in earnest our own manhood. But that's next week.